Greetings. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show here live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast alongside Aaron McIntyre, Todd Erzin. I am Steve Deace. We're brought to you by our friends over at Relief Factor. If you are struggling with too much chronic pain, that's usually because you have too much inflammation, and that's where Relief Factor comes in. It's the drug-free supplement created by doctors who can prescribe drugs, but instead of just masking the pain, it goes after the inflammation in your joints that is likely the cause of it, that lingering, achy stiffness and soreness that just doesn't go away. That's what Relief Factor wants to relieve you from. Now, there's no guarantees, but over the years, over 1 million people have tried the 3-week quick start with Relief Factor. About 70% of them saw such great results in 3 weeks or less that they stuck with the product long term. So why don't you see if you don't see a difference in 3 weeks or less when you go to relieffactor.com. That's relieffactor.com. It costs just $20 to find out with the 3-week quick start at relieffactor.com. And we also want to welcome a brand new show here to Blaze TV as well. It is called Strange Encounters, as Rick Burgess is going to tackle all kinds of paranormal, mystery, occultic, conspiratorial stories that are trending in this day and age, but also put them up against faith and reason at the same time. How much of this is just spiritual warfare? Strange Encounters with Rick Burgess. You don't want to miss it. It's a brand new show out on Blaze TV right now. Strange Encounters with Rick Burgess on Blaze TV. All right, here's what you don't want to miss here today on our show. So we got caught with our pants down in the Wisconsin judicial elections about a month ago, right? Want to make sure the same thing doesn't happen in Pennsylvania. We'll get into that at the bottom of the hour with somebody that's on the ground trying to make sure that does not happen. Next hour, I'm going to hold myself up for idolatry or not, or fake news or not. What we discussed yesterday on the overtime, which is looking at what Trump's executive order against vaccine, or against Freudian slip, against big pharma manufacturing prices. We walked through all of that for overtime yesterday on from a biblical worldview, a little bit more in depth than what I had time to post on social yesterday. But what I had time to post on social yesterday got quite the reaction. And so I'm going to let Aaron show those reactions, and then I'll try to answer whether or not I think that is something I agree with or don't. You guys will decide if you think my answer is fake news or not, or idolatry or not. Am I tripping over my own manhood here? Am I completely violating every edict of my allegedly principled belief system? I've got no problem being cross-examined, and I'd love to put these people on the air. We've had experiences doing this in the past. The last time, almost none of them have ever gone well. The last time we did this, the dude literally almost had a nervous breakdown, and I instructed our staff to never address him ever again out of fear that we were going to put him over the edge. And that was not a joke. I mean, his behavior was beyond erratic, and get help, not a meme. Like, seriously, right? And yes. And so I don't know how many times we'll be able to do this again in the future. All right, but at the same token, I think I should try to do the best I can to hold myself to the same standard I hold everybody else to. That's one of the reasons I hire guys like you. All right. But let's throw up some of these replies next hour, and we'll see how if people make good points as they're trying to check me or not. All right. And then Pop Culture Tuesday is where we're just going to wind Todd up and let him go because the White House has announced a new commission to try and save collegiate sports, all right? And a lot of news is being made about who one of the chairmen happens to be, but not as much news is being told to you about who the other chairman is. So, one of the chairmen is Nick Saban, maybe the greatest college football coach of all time. I would argue that he is. Just introduced the president at his rally. I think actually it wasn't a rally. He was speaking at the commencement address at the University of Alabama for this year, right? That's what it was, actually, I believe. Mm-hmm, and Nick Saban introduced the president there at the University of Alabama. But the co-chair of this commission is the, I don't know how else to describe him. He's the Mr. Moneybags of Texas Tech's NIL program. Texas Tech went out and likely outspent every other college football team this offseason in the transfer portal. Every single one. And him and his partner have a lucrative business. I can't remember what it is. And they just sold it for $4 billion. And similar to when Jerry Jones kind of sold his oil empire to buy the Dallas Cowboys and just had a fascination with, seeing, his favorite team become America's team again, and hired Jimmy Johnson and gave him all the resources he needed, to become a champion team. That's what this guy wants to do for Texas Tech Red Raider football. So we have Nick Saban as one of the co-chairs, but also one of the guys who is doing his best to exploit the current system. That Todd hates at the same time. These are the two co-chairs of the White House Commission.
Well, because I'm moral insane. That's why.
And so we'll see. So Aaron, you got Newport Lights. Did you bring Marlboro Reds? Because we're just going to smoke them if you got them.
Smash the idols.
Okay.
All of them.
I'm just doing an hour and a half show today because Todd's just going to do some.
Yeah, there is some nefarious bourbon up there on the top shelf.
Do you get a sample some of that? Yeah, we
Maybe.
might. Yeah, I might just take. You got any straight, no chaser? I would assume.
For sure.
You are doing R.C. Sproul for the biblical worldview, so I would imagine that you know your bourbon. Then, right? You can't be in any form of reformed camp.
No.
Is that like an entry fee?
I should know my bourbon better, but I really don't. It's way too expensive.
All right. That's a nice flex that I should be paid more. All right. Let's get it started with Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by Meeting with the Saudis. President Trump was greeted in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia this morning by the absolute full Monty of a state reception featuring an Air Force One escort by Saudi fighters, literal rolling out of the royal carpet, and a McDonald's truck. President Trump and Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman announced Saudi Arabia's $600 billion commitment to investment in the United States, as well as bilateral economic and defense deals. Back at home, inflation cooled again in April, as prices on things like gas, appliances, and overall energy came down year over year. By some measures, inflation is down to its lowest point since 2021. The calls for the COVID jab to be taken down, at least from the childhood vaccine schedule, are increasing. Over the past 24 hours, representatives like Chip Roy and Marjorie Taylor Greene have called for the jab to be taken off the childhood schedule. And FDA Commissioner Marty Makary told Charlie Kirk,
"Look, I'd love to see the evidence to show that giving young, healthy children another COVID shot, a sixth COVID booster would help them, but that evidence does not exist. And so we're not just going to rubber stamp things at the FDA, and I don't think you're going to see a push at the CDC to be pushing COVID shots in young, healthy children. That is something that's being discussed right now. I think you're going to see some announcement on that in the coming weeks, but I know they are trying to review all of the scientific data, and guess what? There's no data, there's no good randomized controlled data that the current version, the latest formulation of the COVID shot is necessary for young, healthy children.
It's just a stutter update, according to a report at Axios. CNN host Joseph Goebbels writes in his new book about Joe Biden that White House staff were so concerned about his physical degradation that they were worried he'd have to use a wheelchair if he were to be elected to a second term. Moloch update. Planned Parenthood released its annual report this week, wherein it bragged about murdering a record 402,200 babies via abortion. The report also said the organization enjoyed $2 billion in revenue. The United States welcomed the first 49 Afrikaner refugees from South Africa yesterday. White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller explains why this administration is happy to take them in.
But what's happening in South Africa fits the textbook definition of why the refugee program was created. This is persecution based on a protected characteristic, in this case race. So this is race-based persecution. The refugee program is not intended as a solution for global poverty, and historically it has been used that way. Wherever there's global poverty or wherever there's dysfunctional governments, then the U.S. refugee program comes in, swoops people up, relocates them to America, and you have multi-generational problems. Even into the second and third generation, you have endemic poverty, you have crime issues, you have integration issues. The U.S. refugee program in America has been a catastrophic failure. If you look, for example, at the Twin Cities area, just in terms of markers of educational outcomes, in terms of public safety, in terms of welfare use, it's been a complete public policy failure. And so this is an example of the president returning the refugee program to what it was intended to be used as.
The first Afrikaner refugees arrived in the States yesterday, smiling and waving American flags. The Episcopal Church, which has happily helped settle other types of so-called refugees, announced yesterday they will not help these Afrikaner refugees, citing their commitment to, quote, racial justice and reconciliation. And they're going to be disbanding their refugee resettlement program at the end of this fiscal year. And finally, this from the Babylon Bee: Satan joins Episcopal Church. And that's what happened while we were away.
I mean, has that backdated? I mean, because with all due respect, and that
it's been a minute.
He's been tithing for a while.
I mean, I think he's been a member in good standing there for at least a decade plus, guys. Okay, if not he's like on the Synod board. Okay. All right, let's get to Aaron's montage. Since we have discussed this at length over the last couple of days in various forms, including this show, pulling the COVID shots off the childhood vaccine schedule. All right. I mean, I hate doing this, like deferring to you, like as token Catholic and token anti-vax guy, but the truth of the matter is, one of the reasons that I assemble teams around me that I do is so that people have perspectives and can fill in blanks that I don't have and can explain things to the audience in personal, first-person ways that I'm not capable of, okay? And so please don't be, I hope you guys don't take this to mean that I'm making Todd out to be a token, but he represents parts of our coalition. I don't, right? Aaron does the same as a millennial. Okay. So I want those perspectives that I could not possibly bring to the table in a first person way. All right. So based on your native knowledge of this sect, of this movement within our coalition right now, which is its own movement, but is a part of our coalition overall right now, would this be a satisfactory thing to relieve much of the tension that is happening within this movement, particularly on social media as we speak?
Oh, it would be huge, and it would buy them so much time. Because if you'll remember, one of the reasons why, in the face of no evidence, they kept trying to force the jab onto the childhood schedule, even though we knew then that they didn't need it, is because if it's not prescribed for children, for every aspect of the population, it can't by law be mandated. That's why you need it. So if they take this off, it can't be mandated. So it's bigger than just, we're not saying it's we're not going to give it to children. We're also going to say, by saying this, it can't be mandated for anybody.
I suggested yesterday that the White House just, like the Friday before Memorial Day, put out the classic Friday news dump, like 4:59 Pacific time. All right. After all the newscasts and everything are done, say we're pulling these things, let 4 days go by until Tuesday when there'll be 15 other things we're going to have a meltdown about. And if it comes out, just kind of say, hey, we already beat COVID and the shots aren't needed anymore. We're moving on. It appears they're going to do something somewhat similar to what I'm suggesting. The timetable of a few weeks would be right around Memorial Day. I mean, that would be a few weeks from now. Okay.
Vaccines and Related Biological Products Advisory Committee meeting on the 22nd and asking for public comment as we speak.
Yes. And it appears the language, though, that they're going to choose, that Marty used there, is actually better than what I suggested from a political perspective. If you're trying to do what your base wants, but not open up the president, who's the king of your movement here, of your coalition, to not open him up to criticism, okay? But at the same time, you have to reward this base because he's not sitting there on the throne without them at the same time, right? So, this is a sticky wicket, George, okay? And so how do you thread this needle? It appears the language that they're going to choose to do this is actually very clever, in my opinion. You guys tell me what you think. But you heard Marty say there, there's no trial evidence that the current version has any efficacy for kids whatsoever, that serves any purpose whatsoever, that's going to be the technicality of the talking point wink, wink, nod, nod to people like you and me and the people that listen to shows like this, okay, and watch us, okay? But that's a wink, wink, nod, nod to the 90% of the rest of the country that is caught up, as you like to say, Todd, in the magical power of vaccines to some degree, all right? That this current version has no real efficacy for children, serves no purpose. That's going to be the get out of jail free card. I think that's actually very clever messaging. It's not, I would not necessarily categorize it as satisfactory for those of us that have been in this fight for several years. But if you're politically trying to thread a needle and get everybody in a very diverse White House on these sorts of topics to agree, that's probably a smart thread to tug on. What do you think?
Well, here's the thing about clever language. If you use it and you do it to bring it in my direction, I see what you're doing here. If you turn around and you start telling me in a year from now, clever language, just say, well, this version, I'm going to say, that's from hell.
Yep. See, that's the thing. I've never been opposed. I've been accused of this my entire career, of making the perfect the enemy of the good, not being pragmatic. First of all, I don't know what's more pragmatic than trying to align what we do as best we can with what the only undefeated being in the history of the cosmos has revealed to be good, true, and beautiful. How's that? What's more pragmatic than that guy is 100, that being called God is 100% win percentage. Let's try to emulate him as best as we can. Do you know what's more pragmatic than that? I can't think of anything more pragmatic than trying to just plagiarize the most powerful being on, in all of existence. That notwithstanding, I'm not against incrementalism. It's just much of what we've defined as incrementalism on our side has been losing slower. Okay? In this case, we're using clever language to get to closer to where you want to go. We are taking a step towards that process, right? That is a different kind of incrementalism. Now, we can argue whether that's a big enough incremental step. You're welcome to that opinion if you want and to debate it, but it cannot be argued that we are taking an incremental step towards where people like you want to take us.
Incremental or not, it's clear psychologically and emotionally this has to happen. So,
all right, let's talk in another context about incremental steps that clearly and emotionally have to happen. Okay. I have been, I've been on a magical mystery tour with I guess we'll call them the traditional or legacy pro-life movement my entire career. And I mean, this is my number one signature issue. Everybody knows my story. I share it more. In fact, because I know there's people have teased me, there's a literal drinking game about 15-year-old mom. I have on purpose tried not to mention it as much the last couple of months, just to think some people probably need to sober up after how many times I previously did. All right. And not to mention, I didn't want to tempt anybody during Lent, okay, by throwing that in again, okay? But in all seriousness, there is not a singular topic in my career I've written more on, I have done more on, I've spoken around the country more on than this particular issue, right? And one of the places that passed heartbeat legislation that overturned Roe versus Wade was my home state of Iowa. One of the ways that legislation came to be was a compromise was struck. Because I said to the legacy pro-life people what you just said about what we were just talking about in your context of what's incrementalism, which is because I was a big advocate of the personhood strategy. Personhood in the 2000s and 2010s was essentially what abolitionism is now. It didn't go as far as criminalizing baby murder, but it did state the first half of the equation that human beings at all stages of development need to be protected by law. Okay? As it says in the Fifth Amendment, no person should be denied life, liberty, or property without due process of law. That language is echoed in the 14th Amendment. Okay, and one of the things I kept saying when I would have these discussions with leaders and even debates on this show in previous eras with leaders in the legacy or traditional pro-life movement, you guys keep saying we can't end abortion until we overturn Roe versus Wade. Well, tell me what piece of legislation then, what piece of incremental legislation then that you guys are advocating that will call that into question? Because we haven't questioned the efficacy of Roe versus Wade since Casey versus Pennsylvania in 1991, and that was a case that was actually done by a Democrat governor who was the last pro-lifer to be given a primetime speaking slot at the Democratic Convention. He was given that by Bill Clinton in 1992. He got booed off the stage. So it's been 30 years, since you guys. So what piece of legislation, because this was me calling their bluff. Okay, I'll even play by your rules then. Then we need to craft something that would question the efficacy of Roe versus Wade. And a bunch of bills that say, and then you can kill the baby, or when the baby feels pain, or we can use Zyklon A to gas the kids, but not Zyklon B. These bills aren't doing it. So tell me what would do it. And the compromise that we struck in our state, and I signed on to it to prove a point, was the heartbeat legislation, because we all agree throughout all of human existence, the first thing in any triage situation that we've checked for, as long as, going back to Hippocrates' oath, the first thing we check for in any triage emergency situation, we check for what?
Pulse, heartbeat.
Yep, because that's the first sign of life, okay? And that was the grand compromise that was struck to basically call the bluff. Do you guys really want to overturn Roe or not? Well, these heartbeat bills proliferated around the country, starting with one of the places that started was here in Iowa. And these bills are what ultimately led this critical mass to the overturning of Roe versus Wade. All right. Now, what we have seen happen since Roe, you guys all well know this, is that the legacy pro-life movement has just taken L after L after L after L. Well, we're sitting here now. Those numbers from Life News that Aaron just cited from Planned Parenthood's annual report. $2 billion with a B, $2 billion in revenue last year. Thanks to being able to turn virtually every mailbox in America into a potential abortion clinic, they set a record last year, most murders ever, over 400,000 murders.
And don't forget, they're in on transing the kids now, too.
That's right, because Planned Parenthood has, for decades, been one of the authors of much of the sex ed curriculum that goes on and gender education curriculum that goes on in your government schools all over the country. Last year, they spent over $70 million trying to defeat Republicans all over the country. That's actually one of the lower dollar amounts they've spent. They used to be the biggest bundler for the Democratic Party. The Rainbow Jihad is now. But they used to be number one. So for decades, I mean, George W. Bush gave Planned Parenthood more money than Bill Clinton did. For decades, Republicans have been funding this, both in Congress and via presidents. And after 50 plus years of activism, if we can't get, with Republicans having total control in Washington, D.C., you won't find a poll that says less than 70% of Americans think taxpayer funding should not be going to Planned Parenthood. They made $2 billion in revenue. I think they're okay. If not to mention, they then turn right around and try to unelect every Republican that the legacy pro-life movement tries to elect. If at this moment right now, with the momentum we have culturally on a lot of fronts, where we just beat the Democrats in an election where their chief campaign plank was, vote for us to kill as many babies as you possibly can. That was literally the number one issue they ran on. If we cannot get the Republicans, if the legacy pro-life movement now has so little clout that it cannot get Republicans to defund people that are trying to unelect them and have been for decades, then given all the other post-Roe L's that the movement has taken, I think it's time now for a new paradigm at that point. I think the legacy pro-life movement, the paradigm it operated under, served its time and usefulness in elevating the issue and eventually got around to accomplishing its goal after decades of missteps, but it did finally accomplish its goal. We all saw the shibboleth of the damned, known as Roe versus Wade. We all saw that smashed in broad daylight, correct?
Yes. And
so all good things, Jean-Luc, must come to an end, as the great prophet Q once said. And that may be just the end. That paradigm, it worked, it did its job, but now it's going to be, if you have so little clout, because I'll guarantee you, almost every Republican in that Congress got some kind of pro-life endorsement from one of these legacy groups. I bet you every single one of them did, from at least one of them. So on one hand, either A, you're dishonest with your own donors and getting them to vote for Republicans that they can't even get them to defund Murder, Inc. Just to put the number 400,000, put that in just a context for you. You know how many Americans died serving in Vietnam? Right around 50,000. Last year, Planned Parenthood killed 8 times that many Americans alone. Just last year alone. And that's just one abortion provider. 8 Vietnams happened last year alone in the wombs of America. And your tax dollars went to that. If you're so dishonest that you made a bunch of people vote Republican as pro-lifers and they couldn't even get them to do this basic step, Can you imagine the Democratic Party? Could you imagine MSNBC ever having to do a show? Why is the Democratic Party giving taxpayer benefits to the Family Research Council for their anti-LGBTQ FU bigotry? Could you ever imagine that show would ever be done? It would never need to be. If you have so little clout that you can't get Republicans with this much power to act on this simple thing, or you are so dishonest and so ineffective that you were unable, you got people to vote for Republicans under false pretenses, didn't actually act in primaries when you could have gotten real pro-life people, then at that point, I think the verdict here is clear, in my opinion. That this paradigm has played itself out. Its final objective was met. All right. We should have ended the MCU at Endgame and moved on with something else for the next era. Okay. This legacy, the Endgame was Roe got overturned. Not every Marvel movie was great to get to Endgame, right? But the goal of the MCU was to get to Endgame and wrap it all up in a satisfying conclusion. And it did that, right? It did that. Okay. So not everything that the pro-life legacy movement's done for 50 years has been great and smart and clever and everything else. But the ultimate goal was to overturn Roe versus Wade. That was its ultimate goal from the day it was birthed, right?
Yes.
It did accomplish that, right? Okay. Yes. So we're done here. Thank you. Because it's very clear that their current paradigm is we're just lighting money on fire like the Joker in the Dark Knight. Well, I use that analogy on purpose. Because what does he say after he lights that money on fire? He says something that I think is absolutely applicable to this moment. It's not about the money. It's about sending a message. If you're even pretend pro-life, the other side calls you an abolitionist anyway. Well, you want to put women in prison for committing abortions. They accuse every Republican who's even pretend pro-life of such a thing, right?
Yes.
Okay. So if this is where we are, if the legacy pro-life movement is now so ineffective, to me, this is its final test, final exam. We're in May. Final exam time, final exams happening on campuses and high schools all over the country, right?
Yes. Right
this time of year. Final exam for the legacy pro-life movement. If you can't get Republicans to defund this, then I at this point, then you're just doing, the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I mean, we're just you're not effective. You've outlived your own paradigm. And it is time for a new paradigm at that point, which is, how do we end this once and for all? Period. End of sentence. Agree or disagree?
Yeah. I mean, my goodness, does a movie line fit better than this on this issue? Get busy living or get busy dying? Mm-hmm. I mean, the same battle that we are called to, certainly as Christians, to honor and protect life, has taken many forms throughout all of human history. But from very beginning, Christians were told to have a new respect for life in all of its forms. But the tactics, as Steve said, the strategies, being pragmatic, being wise as serpents, those have had to alter and change throughout time. And that's all Steve is saying right now. He's not making anything new up. One chapter closes, another begins.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm open to hearing other ideas, but kind of in a different context. People want to just nitpick and poke holes constantly over the tariff policy. Okay, fine. What's your idea for dealing with China? What's your idea? Is that a problem? Do we even agree with that? You can nitpick all you want, but eventually you're going to have to come up with ideas and solutions. Right now, from legacy pro-life, from my perspective, I don't know what your plan or vision is. I don't know what that is. So yeah, let's get to the end conclusion here, because that's going to win regardless.
A great truth was confirmed with the story of the South Afrikaners being invited as refugees into the country. We're not going to have time to get to that. We're going to discuss that today in the overtime. For Blaze TV subscribers, you don't want to miss it. You can get a discounted subscription right now to Blaze TV if you use my code DACE. It'll cost you just $8 a month. That's the cost of one of those coffees you get almost every day, for being honest, for a lot of you. All right, 26 cents a day with the code DACE. All right, you'll catch today's overtime, never miss another one, never miss any of the other exclusive content we do every day here at The Blaze. BlazeTV.com, unfiltered, unafraid, on demand. BlazeTV.com/DACE. Use code DACE so you can watch today's overtime and all of our other exclusive content at a discounted rate at BlazeTV.com/DACE, promo code DACE. Folks, when a mom with an unplanned pregnancy is deciding about the future of her child, it can be overwhelming. She wants to make the right choice, but there are so many temptations around in the country and in the culture telling her, hey, that baby's not a life. Well, Preborn's whole ministry is to love these women and empower them with the choice of life. And yeah, it can be literally an eternal moment every single time. For example, Stephanie. She was scared, afraid, felt she didn't deserve love and support. But after receiving so much love and support from a caring clinic at Preborn, she experienced her eternal moment when she met her child on an ultrasound. She left that clinic feeling helpful and now is so blessed by her 5-year-old son. These are the kinds of stories that your generosity has helped to make happen the last few years with this partnership that we've had between The Blaze and Preborn. And when you make this sort of support happen, for as little as $28 a month, you may have funded that ultrasound that convicted the heart of Stephanie that being a mom and not a murderer was the right decision. So to get involved and be the next person maybe that helps to create such an incredible eternal success story, simply dial pound 250, say the keyword baby. That's pound 250, keyword baby, or visit preborn.com/Steve. That's preborn.com/Steve. And yes, your gift is tax deductible and eternally impactful. Well, we kind of got caught maybe with a bit of our knickers down in Wisconsin recently in the judicial election there. Want to make sure that does not happen in another key battleground state of Pennsylvania. And to that end, Cliff Maloney joins us here on the show. Welcome to The Blaze. Cliff, it's good to have you with us for the first time, man. How are you?
It's great, Steve. Appreciate you guys having me. Love the show.
So you happen, thank you very much. You have a bit of experience on the ground in Pennsylvania firsthand. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so 2024, we got tapped, our organization, Citizens Alliance, to run a program called the PA Chase program. And it was pretty simple. Trump lost in 2020 by about 80,000 votes in Pennsylvania. And unfortunately, 141,000 Republicans had actually requested a mail-in ballot, and they never sent it back. And the problem, Steve, is when I grew up in PA, there was one day to vote, right? But in 2020, because of COVID, they changed all the rules. And now there's 50 days, 50, there's 50 days of mail-in voting. And so in 2024, we launched this PA Chase program. We hired 120 full-time ballot chasers, put them in 10 Airbnbs throughout the state, and we ended up knocking on 510,000 doors. Our goal was pretty simple. Trump got 20% of the mail-in versus Biden in 2020. If we could take all the mail-in votes in 2024 and get to 33%, we knew Trump would win. And God willing, we were able to get to 34.5% delivering PA. And it was just a huge team effort and really a great experience to be able to go back to your home state and flip one of the largest swing states.
Lessons learned from this process, because there are multiple things that this general election campaign last year Trump did, I think will be precedent setting on the right moving forward. But in terms of organization, essentially going his own route with outlets like yours, instead of using the traditional, RNC, get out the vote effort, creating his own essentially economy of scale to do it under his own brand, and then having it be successful. I mean, let's face it, guys like you, Charlie Kirk, the system, if Trump would have lost, the system would have just absolutely pinned the whole thing on you and said, that's why you got to go to all these 8-figure consultants and hire 27 of them like Mitt Romney did to lose in 2012. He literally had like 27 7 consultants, like literally. Okay. And so that you guys know when you took on that gig that you guys, they were going to do that to you. If you won, victory has 1,000 fathers, but if you all lost, defeat was going to be an orphan, right? And so you guys won now, so you get to write the history of this. What, in terms of setting precedents moving forward for the right, what is it that you guys learned that you think, and this was only your first time doing this, so you think you'd get better with more repetition, right? So what lessons did you learn, and how does this shift the paradigm for the right moving forward, do you think?
Yeah, well, look, you hit it right on the head. I mean, the biggest obstacle I had in 2024 was the political consultant class on the right. And for those that are thinking they're wondering, well, why wouldn't, consultants want to win? It's not necessarily about that. It's the incentive structure. Let me explain it. So we spent about $3 million in Pennsylvania. I had to go out and raise that. We had over 10,000 patriots across the country chip in, $175 here, $20 here. But the reality is, if you're a political consultant and you want to spend your money on TV ads, if they have to move that $3 million away from TV, they're losing their 15 to 25% commission, right? And so I always tell people, the left, they don't put up with this, Steve, right? They sit down and say, listen, the consultants are going to get paid, but we have to have money to do the ballot chase, in certain states, the ballot harvest, because they do the tactics you need to do to win. And so my hope is that the lesson we take away from this is in 2024, there was enough pressure, enough leverage from folks like Charlie, folks like myself in certain swing states to say, no more excuses. We have to play by the rules, even if we don't like the rules, right? I'm not here to be an advocate for voting by mail, but I'm an advocate for playing and fighting fire with fire based on the current rules. And so I hope that not just learning a lesson from 24, but the pressure continues to mount against some of these folks in the swamp that just want to run the Karl Rove strategy of $1 million TV ads and thinking that we don't have to fight the Democrats when it comes to paid community organizers. I'm hoping that era is over and that we now understand going out and building real grassroots programs.
In other words, it's so hard to poll nowadays, as you well know, in identifying people. And, we have now just online only polling, mobile phone only polling, figuring out who's actually going to vote. And that's if you're trying to do it right. And let's face it, a lot of the legacy media is not. Even if you're trying to do it right, it's very difficult to do. Well, that's a reflection of how elections have changed on the ground as well. And so again, kind of this, previous era of I dropped $400 million a cycle from Crossroads, that's Karl Rove's PAC, into Fox News and a few other friendly outlets to identify my voters. They hear my dog whistle and show up en masse. It's just way more granular than that now. People are way more independent because of these devices now. And because of these devices, actually, we know more, but we're more disconnected from each other than we ever have been before as well. I mean, you really have to go back, even with advanced technology, and do essentially retail politics is what you're describing in ways that are almost throwbacks to other eras. And what I hear you saying is, for all the technology, we're kind of back to hand-to-hand combat now, more than we are just air war battles.
You're saying it perfectly, because when I meet with some of these tech bros and I'm trying to pitch them, the ones that are patriots, there are a couple of them, they always say the same thing. They're like, with all of this technology, with all of this targeting and micro targeting abilities that we have, you really are going back to door-to-door sales. And I say, listen, if you look at the literature on the left, they talk about how door-to-door right now, 1 in every 9 conversations you have creates a vote you wouldn't have had otherwise. And when you compare the cost per door and getting a vote by that voter contact method of door-to-door, you compare it to texting, to mailers, to radio, to digital, to TV, to mail. It all depends. But what I tell people is the left has put out this data. There's a book out there, Get Out the Vote. There's a 5th edition, and it lays out the cost for each of these voter contact methods. And door-to-door is the best way. But Steve, one major thing that has changed since the $400 million TV ad buys that you referenced is the rules, right? The playing field's different. If you have 1 day to vote, that's a great strategy. You're just doing top level messaging. You're trying to turn out your voters that are high propensity, likely to vote voters. This 50 days of voting changed the entire game, because what Democrats realized, specifically in Pennsylvania, is there's roughly 1 million Democrats and 1 million Republicans that are registered to vote, but they're very unlikely to vote. And so
or
Democrats
what's called low propensity voters, for example.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they voted in 0, 1, or 2 of the last 4 general elections. So they're not that likely. They're not consistent. And so what we learned this cycle is if you just go to those people, we're not going to swing voters, right? I'm not going to somebody that's a soft Democrat and because they're pro-life or pro-gun trying to connect with them. It's none of that. This is going to people that have a Trump sign in their yard. They have a Trump shirt when they answer the door, but they didn't vote in 2016 or 2020. Like, to us, that sounds crazy, but there were tens of thousands of these people just in Pennsylvania that we had to target. And because we had 50 days to knock on their door, repeatedly go back, we turned Trump supporters into Trump voters. That was the whole plan, and I'm happy to report it worked.
So now the question becomes, is this unique to the Trump phenomenon, or is this something that we can reclamate outside and beyond, when his term ends, and he's also pushing 80 years old, right? And so what does the future hold? Because we have struggled. If you look at the midterm cycle, I know this data as well as I do, Cliff, if not better. I mean, we kind of broke a mold in this last election cycle. Typically, you can just watch what happens in off year and special elections in the in-between years, and that gives you an idea of which side is likely going to win the next cycle. Well, we got drilled. I think we won one that really mattered, and it was the night of the New Hampshire primary when we had a massive amount of turnout of our own voters organically anyway, because Trump was kind of on the ballot in the presidential cycle. Democrats outperformed us in a lot of those special off-year elections in between, and then the outlier is what you guys pulled off on Election Day. So a lot of people are wondering, did you guys tap into something unique because of Trump, or is this something that can carry on beyond him? And one of the tests is coming up in your home state right now here soon with this judicial election.
Yeah, and look, I tell everybody, Trump is obviously something that is unique, right? There's no way to model it, to poll it. Donald Trump is Donald Trump. But I tell everybody, there is one thing I learned. You do have to have a candidate at the top of the ticket, right? I say there are 3 buckets for what we do to be successful and to win an election. 1, I need door knockers, right? I'm always working to recruit, develop, train, build out those teams. 2, I need a candidate that we can knock for. And Trump checked that box because he was on every ballot, right? But that is a big warning sign for the future, is you have to have a candidate that people are going to get excited about. And the third thing is obviously I have to fund it, right? I'm not getting money from parties. I'm not getting money from candidates. And by the way, Steve, this is nothing new. We're just emulating what the left does, right? Soros goes out and funds all of these 501c4s, all of these 501c3s. It's not the DNC spending this money.
This is an important point that you're raising, because we have our own propaganda on our team too. Well, look how much more money the RNC has than the DNC, and yet their candidates are always better funded collectively than ours. And I think our audience needs to hear somebody other than me say, hey, it's because Democrat donors just bypass the DNC and go right directly peer-to-peer to the candidates that they like. And I think our audience needs to hear that, because they hear all this propaganda on our side. Well, the DNC's a joke, it has no money, and yet they wonder why there's 15 ads on TV for a Democrat for every 5 for a Republican. You're explaining why.
Yeah, and I think these organizations, look, our organization, Citizens Alliance, you've got Turning Point Action over with Charlie Kirk. There are plenty of organizations that have kind of been delegated. Now, the left has done this for years, but 2024 was the first time you saw this, where legally and compliantly, people were kind of being funneled or told, hey, this is the group that is running the registration in their state. This is the group that's running the ballot chase. This is the group if you want to do texting, right? You're starting to delegate and get it down. But this is all just the left's playbook. We're just always 4 to 10 years behind. Mm-hmm. And so I tell people the candidate is so important. If you give me a milquetoast like a Nikki Haley or somebody like a Cheney type that's going to be our nominee or the top, even just for a governor's race or a U.S. Senate race statewide, this program falls apart. Because activists have to be excited about being out there chasing ballots. Donors cost $175 to sponsor a full day of ballot chasing. You got to be excited about what's at the top of the ticket. So my warning to all Republicans out there that are actual conservatives, the real battle is the heart and soul of the Republican Party. Yes, we have to crush the commies. Yes, we have to keep these crazy liberals in check. But if the Republican Party isn't a true conservative, a constitutional republic type party, we're going to have major issues. Mm-hmm. So that is an identity crisis that needs to make sure we solve it. Trump is Trump, but there's going to be a vacuum after that. And I'm really hoping that the liberty-minded folks that actually want to doge the country, that actually want to doge their states, that want to limit government. We all have to work to make sure that's the new face of the Republican Party. Because if not, with these new rules, it is going to be a bloodbath if we get some neocon or somebody at the top of the ticket that just doesn't connect with working class Republicans.
Amen. All right. I got about 90 seconds. How can our audience help you guys and enlist in what's happening right now with this key judicial election in Pennsylvania upcoming?
Yeah, pachase.com. We've got plenty of efforts we're doing. Our objective is to build a red wall. We have to create behavioral patterns like the Democrats do to actually get Republicans that are not likely to vote to get a ballot sent to their house. But pachase.com, folks can sponsor a ballot chaser. Heck, if you want to come to Pennsylvania, it is the most important swing state. It is one of the largest swing states. And this 50 days of voting, we feel we have the real solution. But phase.com. And look, we're knocking 500,000 doors this year. Okay, when I'm talking about relaunching this is every single year. Our governor, Josh Shapiro, has 120 full-timers on the ground right now. We are the people, we are the remedy to match that and fight fire with fire. We're going to beat Democrats at their own game. phase.com, and follow me on X @Maloney. Steve, appreciate you as always.
Thank you, brother. That was very well spoken, very well said. We'll have you back soon. All right, take care and keep us posted on how that's going out there.
You got it. Thanks so much.
Thank you. You bet. All right, guys, what do you think?
You know, while he's talking, how much more human the entire enterprise is the focus of like his message, both into the particular candidate, in the door knocking about these. This is not an algorithm, which is not to say a plan, a process, weighing and measuring some variables more than others, but ultimately this is about people. I couldn't help but thinking back 2022, Save Girls Sports in Iowa. The left did have their one human example, the sad stack story of what, and they use this all the time throughout history. But we had my daughter and her 50 friends that show up to the Capitol, and the Democrats knew. Game over. And now for the next couple of years, that even then they haven't had that physical example. They made the arguments more human. And everything is excelled. The ideas, the people, the best of all is coming out. That seems to be what he understands.
Yep.
Yes, and I just want to reinforce something that he said, alluded to kind of in different words. I wish this were not the system that we had. The voting system that we had. We should not do 50 days, a season, the festival of voting season. That should not be the way that it is. But those are the current rules. And speaking for myself, you're a dummy if you just want to spit into the wind and say, this is not the way it should be, so we're not going to try to leverage the current rules to maximum advantage. If that is any form of your outlook on the world in the year 2025, you're not going to make it. It should not. There's a lot of things that should not be this way, but that's the way that they are. Now, you can't just stay there. You just can't stay in realism. You have to work within the rules the way they are right now to achieve an optimistic vision of whatever you're trying to accomplish. But I think that's really important to enforce. We should not have a voting season. But if we're going to have one, we should leverage the rules, the current rules, the Calvin Ball rules, whatever they are this election season. We should leverage those to our maximum ability. Maybe it won't work out for us every single time, but you're a dummy if you're not even trying.
This is what I was talking about in the overtime yesterday when you turn Milton Friedman into porn.
Correct. Right. Yes.
Okay. And we have to live in the world as it actually is. Okay. We still have to. We live on terra firma here, right? And Cliff is correct. This is the world we have. And Aaron, your reference is right. They're Calvin Ball rules, so we got to get better at it than them. All right, back here with Hour 2, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast with Todd and Aaron McIntyre. I'm Steve Deace. Let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox by emailing us, steve@stevedeace.com. That's DEACE. Like us on Facebook, MeWe, and Gab. You can follow me at Steve Deace Show on X, Instagram, and TikTok. And then you can also, please, if you wouldn't mind, subscribe to our new YouTube channel. You can subscribe to that at Deace Show on YouTube. Why do we need a new YouTube channel? We may have some news for you on that very shortly. All right. Told you guys I was going to consult with some folks. and not just take this lying down, and I'm not. So, but for now, we do need a new YouTube channel, so subscribe to it, please, at Deace Show on YouTube, at Deace Show on YouTube. And then also, if you love the podcast version, thank you. Still the number one way people get access to our content here with the long-form show is via Apple and iTunes. If that's you or any other podcast platform that you enjoy, please, if you love the show and you haven't done this yet, leave us a 5-star review, and we thank all of you who have. You can also hit subscribe, or if you're, again, on Apple iTunes, click on follow. That way, every time we do a new show, it shows up in your feed there, on your podcast feed, on your app, on your phone, most likely every single time. And thanks to all of you that have done that too. Thanks to our friends over at Beam Dream Powder. They share your belief in hard work, self-reliance as well, but they also understand that getting a good night's sleep goes a long way into making sure that you can have that kind of productive time during the day. And that's why you want to check out Beam Dream Powder. Proudly funded in America, run by people who share our rugged, individualistic American values. It's a healthy nighttime blend packed with science-backed ingredients like melatonin, magnesium, and more that are shown to improve sleep so you can wake up refreshed, ready to take on the day. I've used Beam on numerous occasions. Just used it again the other night. Got a phenomenal night's sleep every single time. The Dream Powder has a lot of different flavors. I do the chocolate peanut butter one, but you can go with the one that you prefer. And no, you're not going to tack on a bunch of sugars and carbs right before bedtime. All right, they make it as healthy as absolutely possible while being tasty as well. So here's the deal. Beam is giving you guys the ultimate Patriot discount of up to 40% off if you want to try their best-selling Dream Powder and get up to 40% off. You can for a limited time if you do that. Go to shopbeam.com/Steve. That's shopbeam.com/Steve. Use the code Steve at checkout. That's shopbeam, as in beam in your eye. Shopbeam.com/Steve. Use the code Steve for up to 40% off and sleep better, wake up stronger, show up ready for your family, your work, your country, because when you're well rested, you're unstoppable. Shopbeam.com/Steve. Use the code Steve at checkout at shopbeam.com/Steve. All right. Fake news or not. We can also go with idolatry or not if you want. All right. So I'm not going to just completely repeat everything I said yesterday in the overtime, and maybe some of you saw me post on social media why I am at least open. I didn't even give an endorsement of it, but I'm open to the executive order that President Trump gave on trying to price control. That's what they were. Let's call it what it is. If a Democrat did it, we'd call it a price control. That's what he's trying to do. He's trying to control prices of prescription drugs. And just to give you a very quick summary, I went into it in way more detail from a worldview perspective. All right. But the system we have currently says to Big Pharma that we will fund you like Operation Warp Speed. We will let you capture the regulatory agency so you have say over regulating your own products like we've seen at the CDC and FDA, particularly over the last few years. And then we will protect you with liability shields at the exact same time. Does any of that sound like capitalism or free markets to you?
No.
Of course not.
Is that the system that we have?
No.
Yeah.
Well, yes.
Yes. I know. Yeah, but you meant no. We don't have capitalism. I know what you meant, Aaron. Is there a meaningful option on the table right now to undo the system that I just articulated? Is that option, has it presented itself? Can we act on that right now as things stand to undo the system I just laid out?
Well, there's options, but there's none with legs or force of will.
There are thoughts. There's Substacks and white papers.
I left my magic wand at home. Sorry.
Yeah, but there's not a vote. I can't act on this right now. Right? Okay. There's nothing I can do. Could in the example I gave yesterday in the overtime was, could Polycarp get into the throne room of Caesar's palace to demand that every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that Jesus is Lord? Could he do that? No. But when Caesar came to him into his palace and said, you do the same, he could do that, right? And so he stood up against what he could stand up against, right? So there is no realistic free market capitalistic option that we can act upon. That is the system we have. As a result of that system we have, the federal government via Medicare and Medicaid is also the biggest healthcare customer in the world. 40% of all healthcare dollars are spent by the federal government via Medicare and Medicaid. So the federal government protects the pharmaceutical industry. It funds the pharmaceutical industry. It's been regulatory captured by the pharmaceutical industry, and it's also its biggest client. Does that sound anything remotely to capitalism and free market economics to you?
It does not.
And therefore, we've stipulated. Stipulation number 2, there is no option on the table en masse to undo said system. It just simply is not available, correct?
Correct.
So therefore, we have to live in the world in which we had, as Aaron, you said, Calvin Ball rules. Calvin Ball rules is what is the rules of our healthcare system, correct? So therefore, if we're going to have Calvin Ball rules, then I think they ought to be applied equitably to everybody. Okay.
Want to get nuts? Let's get nuts.
That's right. So if we're going to have 50 days of voting, as Cliff Maloney just said in the last segment, then Republicans get to ballot harvest too. Don't get us wrong. We'd prefer no one ballot harvested and we all just voted on the same day, but that's not the system we have, right? So if these are the rules, then we both get to play by the rules. So if these are the healthcare rules, then the idea that Albert Bourla gets to go public with his company at Pfizer, gets public protection from liability from said government, gets his product mandated by that same government, but Grandma Moses can't buy a Christmas gift for her kids this year because because how expensive her blood pressure medication is. That sound like an equitable distribution of the Calvin Ball rules to you?
It is not.
It is not. And so therefore, I'm for an equitable distribution of said Calvin Ball rules.
Once again, you and Pope Leo the 13th, back in the 19th century, just like...
2 peas in a pod,
like
simpatico.
this. Brothers.
All right. So there was way more to it. We got into hierarchies of values, but that was in the overtime. We don't have that kind of time today, but that's a good abbreviated, why I laid this out. Okay. And that relieving human suffering comes before fealty to any economic theory. And that we practice economic theories that we think incentivize altruism because it will relieve human suffering. The goal is the relief of human suffering. That is the goal of the healthcare system, not to maximize profits. It's to relieve human suffering. All right. So with that being said, I received quite a bit of criticism about this, which I'm fine with. We thought in the past, we've tried it, putting some of these people on. I just can't think of a time that it's worked out well. For the show, I mean. And the last time we did this, the guy, darn near, man, God bless him. I've seen he's back, and that's good, and seems to be doing stuff with Governor DeSantis down there. And God bless him. I really hope he's doing okay, because I thought he was going to have a nervous break. That guy was going to have a nervous breakdown on our show, and even to the point. And I don't do this very often. Trust me, I get asked to do it a lot. I get asked to police what you guys post on social media a lot. All right, it is very rare that I will step in and say, "Hey, ixnay." I mean, it's not happened very often, has it?
No.
But one of the few times that it has was with this guy. And I said, as soon as we said goodbye to him, don't bring it up. Don't talk about it. Don't ever address him again. I'm really worried about that guy's mental health. And I just wanted to have a conversation, man. I didn't want to cause a nervous breakdown. Okay. Nevertheless, though, I do want to be held accountable to some degree. I think it's fair to be held accountable to the same standard I'm holding our public figures to. And I'm one now, right? So I instructed Aaron. Some of the posts I made about this on social media yesterday received hundreds of replies. I said to Aaron, hey, you pick what you think is a good cross-section of these responses. I'll give my best reply back, and you guys can decide if you think my reply is fake news or not, idolatry or not. All right, am I abandoning my principles for the Orange King yet again? Because I'm well known for this, of course. Or, does the person just have a point we didn't think of, right? Or is it pointless? Fair?
Fair.
All right, Aaron, fire away.
All right, so this is your original post quoting Caroline Leavitt saying President Trump is signing an executive order that's going to reduce the cost of drugs in this country by more than half at least. You said, back when I believed in free market ideology, before I truly studied free market liturgy, I would have had all the traditional buzzwords lined up to oppose this. Now that I know what we practice isn't what we preach, we're more corporatist than capitalists, I'm open to this idea.
Now, can I make a quick distinction?
Yes.
All right. Free market philosophy or ideology is what we claim to believe. Liturgy is what a church actually practices. Okay? So I laid out for you guys when I laid out what our current healthcare practices are. That's our healthcare liturgy. And we all agreed, right? That's not free market. That's not capitalist in really any way, shape, or form.
Right.
right? So that's the distinction I was trying to draw. Okay.
All right, you ready to go with some responses?
You bet. Go ahead.
We'll begin with Croaky Cayman. Picture of you in a communist getup. Comrade Deace, freshly baptized in the liturgy of price controls, welcomes you to the People's Republic of Drug Pricing. Buzzwords are for capitalists. We prefer decrees.
That is, by the way, great. I'm not even going to. You made me laugh out loud. That's great.
I think this one is decent. Morimoto says, so because we held the correct position and it's still correct, it ceases being correct. Why exactly? How do we get to the corporatism in the first place? Was it not this type of capitulation? And when and how would this be undone if the result is bad and we capitulate?
Well, the first thing I would say to Morimoto is, what are you doing to not capitulate? I mean, if you are part of like a meta-share, and you used to be, right, Todd?
Yeah.
If you're part of like
we are right now.
If you guys are okay. If you're part of like a meta share program, and you're paying cash out of pocket, then come talk to me, okay? But if you're not doing that, if you have conventional health insurance, then you've already capitulated. So I would need to know that. Right, it's like kind of like what I said during the last campaign. I get a sense already these are going to be proxies for Trump DeSantis again in many cases, probably. Mm-hmm. But explain to me why you could vote for George W. Bush twice, but you can't vote for Donald Trump twice. Remember when I said that last year? Explain that one to me. And by any standard, how is George W. Bush to the right of Donald Trump collectively whatsoever? He's not. So if you could vote for George W. Bush twice, I don't know why you couldn't vote for Donald Trump twice. Similarly, if you are part of the conventional healthcare system, you've already capitulated. Why would you ask me to uphold your own standard better than you do? And I'm not here to condemn you for that. It's the system, by and large, we are given. You have to be, these are niches. What you guys are doing, Aaron, you have to be part of a niche. You probably have to take a lot of preventative health, seriously, right? Mm-hmm. To try to minimize the amount of times you need to access the conventional healthcare system, right?
Yep.
Okay. So if you're doing that, talk to me. But short of that, everybody is a party to what you're calling me a sellout for acknowledging is happening. You see what I'm trying to say? I mean, I need to see you guys take your own dogma seriously. If you have conventional health insurance, then you've already capitulated. So why are you lecturing me? Thoughts?
Well, and already we're 2 for 2 on anonymous accounts, and there's a lesson there. When you're being lectured about, abandoning the free market and clever language and doing, they're trying to catch you in some sort of like infinite loop, don't you understand? You need to get off this ride. When do you get off? Well, if you think you're all for purity and that you should adhere to that at all costs, why are you anonymous? Because every time you guys give the excuse you're anonymous, don't you understand the damage that would come to me if my name was out there in the free market? See, you don't even believe in your own psychology. By all means, be a part of the free market of ideas.
Okay.
Put your name on it.
We've got one with their name on it, assuming this is their real name. Janet Garth says, everything I learned about life I now reject because I found Trumpism. Side note, I hope he gives me a ride on that new plane.
I mean, that's a red herring. That there's no claim there. There's no question there. I mean, I don't know who you are. When Trump's justices overturned Roe versus Wade, did you thank him for that? When he brought home the longest imprisoned American hostage from Hamas over the last weekend, did you thank him for that? Inflation is down to 2.3% today. Did you thank him for that? Illegal border crossings in this country have declined over 100% since January. Did you thank him for that? Gas is down to about $2.85 a gallon nationwide right now. Did you thank him for that? You see what I'm saying? I mean, that's not a standard. That's a troll.
And furthermore, you were just honest before that in that initial. What I believed, I don't believe anymore. because the other people who don't believe in it or were gaming the system all along won't allow me to believe it anymore. This
Correct.
is the thing. I can't, if I thought all along that this free market was a real thing, and I've said on the show recently, I said one of the biggest lies in my adult political life is the free market. Not because I don't understand the theory or realize at the very least it is, we're paraphrasing Winston Churchill, capitalism is the best form of economy except for all the rest of them. Okay. But if you're going to tell me then that we are actually going to treat the flat screen TV the same as the life-saving drugs, the same as the actual human being who makes most of them, I can't do that. I can't do that as a Christian. That's a lie. And so we're seeing, and it's not just theoretically a lie. In practice, it's a damaging one. Many, many people have been hurt by it. So we're playing, that's 3 in a row now. One, maybe put their name on it, but you're playing word games. I'm just going to have to go Colonel Jessup. Is that all you got, Lieutenant Caffey?
You know what's being revealed here already is how much we really just want talking points.
Yeah.
And we got off on this for many years. Just give me a talking point that makes me feel self-righteous.
It affirms me.
But doesn't require any action from me. You want me to just give you a talking point. You want me to tell you that the system is terrible and evil and this won't work and it's socialism and it's bad, while at the same time, 99% of you are actively engaged in said system. And why are you? Because it's, by and large, the system we have with not a lot of other options to it.
This is a great point.
Okay, and so that's why I'm not condemning you for that, by the way, because of what I just said.
Yes.
But you want me to give you a talking point that justifies your hypocrisy and makes you feel good because you morally know what is right, but are unable to actually act on and do it. Okay, I'm not going to do that. All right. That's another form of, that's not any different than Trump is great, gave us some chocolate cake engagement farming. That's the stuff that still believes that there was a conservative movement that Ron DeSantis represented, and he didn't just make Florida happen all by himself. When now you're figuring everything I told you is true. Yes, he did. And there is no movement. And the first chance that they have to return that state back to its own vomit, the legislative branch of that state is attempting to do right now. Okay. So, for example, in the latest data, okay, Florida ranks number 1 in highest Medicare expenditures per beneficiary in the United States of America in the latest data. Is Ron DeSantis trying to stop those checks from arriving? And he's sending the sheriffs out. This is socialism. We cannot allow this. And are they guarding the mailboxes to make sure those checks don't come in? Of course not, because he's not an idiot. All right, we have to live in the world as it is.
Oh, and all these people are. That's they are. Wherever they're living, if you found them, these guys aren't off the grid.
Yes, they are. But they want me to. They want us to continue to act as if we're not.
Exactly.
All right. That we know that this stuff cannot work. These sorts of government Ponzi schemes. At the same time, I'm taking part in them, and I will call my member of Congress when my grandmother's Medicare payment falls short. At the same time. Okay? I'm not going to do that for you. You want somebody else to give you a self-righteous intellectual talking point? It won't be here. I'm just not into that. Where do we actually live and breathe, and what's the most good that we can actually do, while at the same time we have to render under Caesar that which is Caesar's and render under God that which is God's.
Next, somebody who's not necessarily mad at you, but says, I think what he's trying to say, or she is trying to say, is that it's not as complicated as even you made it out to be. Pharmaceuticals, the government already fixes prices by buying them at the lowest price offered on the U.S. market. They are merely extending that concept to buying at the lowest price offered in the world. So make pharma adjust their pricing structure. Stock market will be interesting as pharma struggles to keep revenues
That's very
growing.
well said.
That's from Storm.
Yeah, that's very well said. Don't disagree with any of that. I think that's very well said. Probably said better than how I described it, frankly.
No Quarter says, at first I was disheartened and sad with what happened to you and the Blaze as a whole. Now I look forward to watching the whole lot of you reap what you've sown.
Well, I mean, we have lower than expected inflation today. China cut its tariffs on American imports down to 10%.
And there's increasing evidence that it was China who capitulated in this, not the United States.
Illegal border crossings are down like 100%. We are taking white South Afrikaners right in the face of the media and rubbing their noses in it as refugees. Listen, man, things aren't perfect. All right. This big, beautiful bill thing later this summer is going to cause this thing is going to cause a Maha level meltdown. Okay. And we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, I'm sure. Right. But
I think we're on vacation that week.
Yeah. But for right now, I think things are going pretty good. I mean, what did you want? Did you want Joe Biden in his wheelchair making these decisions? I don't understand what it is you guys want instead. Something different than the very system that you're actively taking part in. Okay. Where is the option to not take part in said system? You can't even, a lot of you I know live in Florida. You guys can't even pass a freaking tax cut in your state right now. Get off the high horse, man. You cannot even figure out how to pass taxes in the state of Florida right now.
But his handle is no quarter, Steve. Bow! Indeed. Bow, Steve Deace.
Yes, no quarter. Yes.
Stinson Norwood, clown emoji.
That's actually kind of funny again, but Stinson Norwood is a cool name.
If that's your real name.
If it's a real name, that is a cool name.
Yeah, let's...
That is...
Anyway,
that's a captain of industry. That's the quarterback of your prep academy football team. That... Maybe lacrosse team might be a better description, but that's a pretty freaking cool name. But I notice again, what alternative did he want? Tell me, under the system we have, what would be the most good that Donald Trump could have done unilaterally, other than what he did? Do you know what it is?
We can't do anything.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Then that's because there isn't. The answer is there isn't anything else.
The left is going to use it against us when they get back in power.
Yeah.
We can't do anything.
Yes.
Ever.
So we're going to self-righteously sit here and complain about a system we have no plan to undo. There is no option to do something different than en masse. And by and large, I'm not a member of a Medi-Share program, so I'm taking part in it at the exact same time. Is that what the scoreboard says, right? Yeah.
Matt W., comrade.
That's kind of lame, frankly. I mean, I got to do a lot better than that.
My hope after yesterday is that all these people aren't real and they're just all...
Oh, no, that person, Matt W., is real. I've met him in person.
Oh, you have?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And so have you, probably.
I probably have
them too.
burner
Okay.
accounts. That's what I was really hoping for after yesterday.
Young America says, I'm not open to this idea. Even broken as it was, it allowed for innovation. All my generic drugs came out of the system. You won't even know the drugs you may have benefited from that didn't get made. This is an extension of an argument that I saw a lefty making yesterday, saying that this is genocidal because Americans subsidize the research and development of new drugs that help people in Africa live.
I'm open you may be proven correct, but I just lived through 5 years where I watched Big Pharma, with the aid and comfort and shielding of the United States government, actually try to stop innovation from happening and try to stop reconstituted drugs from actually saving people's lives. So you may be proven correct about this. I'm open to you being proven correct later, but based on the last 5 years and what we witnessed here during COVID, I'll take my chances that that's a paradigm from another era.
See, assuming we aren't overly medicated, which we are, but that is actually the best theoretical argument
I agree.
You might have.
Yep, I agree.
There's a morality to it, but then again, I would just have to second it strenuously. They took ivermectin off on purpose because without already existing cheap life-saving drugs, you can't mandate a new vaccine.
Correct.
Why do you trust them in the way you trust them on this?
And they gave you
should not.
They gave you a cancer drug with a black box warning,
Yes.
and gave you that instead of ivermectin instead, and all it did was cause you kidney failure. They did that instead.
This is
That is the great irony, Todd.
This is toxic empathy.
How did I not even realize this?
Yeah.
Most of these people, for years now, rightfully so and righteously so, have railed against Big Pharma. Now that we're going to stick it to Big Pharma one way or another.
Yeah.
No. You can't do it that way.
I need my pills. I mean, guys.
So far, this is the only one so far that has made a case that this is not the best option to relieve human suffering. Nothing else that you have demonstrated so far, Aaron, has made any case at all that this is that there's a better option than what Trump suggested. Maybe for relieving of human suffering. Just talking points.
Maybe Bird Dog. Dace, it's impressive how far you have fallen, truly.
Guys.
RJ, clown emoji, clown emoji, clown emoji.
I mean, one of the very first fights I ever took on in my career was years before I got a phone call from a guy named Donald Trump once. Was for project labor agreements. Not that I'm in favor of them. Project labor agreements say that non-union shops that bid on government jobs have to pay the same wages as the government, or the union shops that bid on them do. I'm not in favor of that at all. But understand that this was in response to the fact we were letting corporatists just basically rape Iowa taxpayers. We had just come out of the film office fiasco and everything else that was going on. And so on one hand, we're going to do all this corporate grift in Iowa, but then the little guy's not going to get his cut? No. Again, I'm for nobody getting anything. But if we're going to tell billionaires that they want to come into the state, they get to rape and violate the taxpayer, then I promise you, the guy working in the cubicle that's doing most of the living and dying, and the guy out there with the jackhammer on the road doing most of the living and dying, you're damn right I'm going to make sure that he's going to get a real wage then. If we're just giving out made up money, well, then we can give out made up money that'll pay people a wage that'll actually support a family. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm in favor of nobody getting anything, but if you're going to give the billionaires a bunch of stuff, then you can bet, yes, I'm in favor of treating their employees like human beings at that point. Then, yes, which you guys have failed to do once, and this is, by the way, this is why you guys can't win any elections anymore.
Correct.
Is what I'm articulating here right now. You have yet to field something that demonstrates you can alleviate human suffering in the now. In the now. Not decades from now, in the now, when people actually are voting. In the now. None of you have are there any of these posts that have demonstrated they have any ability, an alternative theory of what will right now alleviate the most human suffering? Are there any of them out there, Aaron, as you're looking through this?
Nick Seltzner says, MAGA said good, so I follow.
Exactly.
Lulu says, men who grovel for money are beyond pathetic. And it's got somebody in a MAGA hat licking feet.
I do like that. That's very funny. That's a great.
Crown of Ash and Salt says, the most listless of vessels.
I like that one.
I promise you this is a cross-section of the replies. Johnson Tucker says there's no such thing as free trade or free market pricing. Everyone is in on the take in some fashion. Unless there's a counter to corruption and greed by someone with the consumer perspective, we will continue to be robbed and blind and love it as we are told.
100%. 100%. That's the smartest reply you've read yet, and it's not even close. Probably, that is a great deductionist summary of the system we currently are mired in.
Especially the last part, because it applies blame equally. It's like all the power brokers that have their thumbs on the scale, it indicts them, but at the end it says, and let's face it, consumer, you like a lot of it. It scratches your belly enough in the right way. You may complain in other ways, but are you really prepared to do what needs to be done? Anonymous accounts certainly aren't.
But this is a lot of your snotty replies. This is why you guys aren't a movement.
Yeah.
This is why you're ineffective. This is why you can't win anything anywhere, because you can't move beyond. You're Pharisees. You cannot move beyond philosophical exactness into the spirit of the law and dealing with what really ails people. And you haven't even tried. So we get busy, we're on the go. How do we live a healthy lifestyle? Well, here's one suggestion. Field of Greens. You can enjoy a delicious glass of doctor-formulated Field of Greens each day. It'll help you to feel amazing, help your blood work, your overall health. Maybe your doctor will also take notice of what you've been doing, and he'll say, hey, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. All right. Field of Greens comes in lots of different combinations as well for different kinds of parts of your health overall that you want to emphasize, including supporting vital organs like your heart, liver, kidneys, metabolism, immune system, healthy blood cells, and more. We'll get you started as well with 20% off and free shipping when you visit fieldofgreens.com and use my code Steve. That's fieldofgreens.com code Steve. That's fieldofgreens.com code Steve to get 20% off at fieldofgreens.com code Steve. All right, now's the time on Sprockets when we dance. Okay. Aaron?
Yeah. Yes.
You got,
yes.
Marlboro
I say
Reds.
yeah way too often. I have to say yes.
Marlboro Reds. Maybe you kind of want to go old school rap artist with Newport Lights. Okay. Maybe you want to be the cool kid on your college campus, right? Burning Camel lung darts there outside of the dorm hall. Okay. But we now come, folks, to the Smoke 'em if you've got 'em portion of the program, otherwise known as this week's Pop Culture Tuesday, when we look at what is trending within pop culture and how that does or does not align with what it is we're trying to conserve around here. And last week, since we last had this conversation, Mr. Erzin, Aaron, you should be over there winding him up as we speak right now, winding that toy. All right. The President of the United States has announced a blue ribbon commission on how to save collegiate sports after speaking with former Auburn football coach turned U.S. Senator Tommy Tuberville, speaking with former Alabama football coach Nick Saban, who introduced the president when he gave the commencement address there at the University of Alabama recently. And they asked for an executive order. The president said, how about a blue ribbon commission first? 2 individuals have been appointed to be co-chairs of this commission. The aforementioned Nick Saban, I think, absolutely the greatest college football coach of all time. His co-chair, though, is an interesting decision because he might be the most lucrative donor to NIL in all of college sports as we speak. And he is a massive donor for Texas Tech. Name escapes me. I forgot. Sorry. Recently sold his company for a few $1 billion.
Cody Campbell?
Thank you. Cody Campbell is his name. Yes. Sold his company for a few $1 billion, and he basically wants to see Texas Tech football matter nationally one time before God calls him home. So he's making that happen. I think Texas Tech very likely outspent every other college football program in the transfer portal here in the year of our Lord 2025. So we have Nick Saban demanding action that we at least return to some form of traditionalism. And now you have, essentially the J.R. Ewing of the NIL transfer portal era. These are the co-chairs of said commission. And now it is 12:39 local time here. We just hand this over to Todd, Aaron, and I think I'll see you for the sign-off, brother.
Sounds good.
All right, Todd. Go ahead, Ben.
Well, first,
I got some text and stuff to return. You go ahead.
First, this commission is already failing because I haven't been called yet. And I have set the standard for excellence on this, and that's just objectively true. I mean, there's not a more clear-headed thinker on this than me.
And humble.
Yes. Why? Hey, this is Calvin Ball. What? I have to be humble? Have you seen everybody else showing their ass on this thing? No,
nice.
I'm not. Listen, as I said last week, normally whenever Congress wants to get involved with this kind of stuff, it's just grandstanding. It never goes anywhere. They just want to rub elbows with the sports bro. It's always pathetic. But this thing is all just so impossibly stupid now. I mean, honestly, these guys actually have managed, sports bros in this world have managed to make the likes of the NCAA and Congress look like someplace you can go for help. That's how dumb it is. So here's the thing. I've read one story about this, Cody Campbell, this guy. So I don't, it was a fairly lengthy story to prepare for this show because I had never heard of this guy before. But so I'm connecting dots, reading between the lines. I know nothing about him personally. But because he clearly has this level of money to throw around, I think I know what might be going on here and why this is the guy for the moment. And it has to do with when I was in Cleveland about a month ago for my daughter's...
All great sports conversations begin with the sentence, when I was in Cleveland.
I was in Cleveland. I was on the bus to take you from the airport to the rent-a-car place. And I happened to have my Razorback hat on. And so this Florida State guy says, Woo Pig Suey. And I said, okay. And this guy looks like he's at 65 or something like this. And he says, I'm a booster for Florida State University. We get into this talk. And my wife's listening. And
because she's afraid of how this will go.
Well, but she actually said, I learned something by what you talk about with these kinds of conversations. Because he started off complaining about how he, and I can't remember the number of boosters, the obscene amount of money they are each now responsible for coming through on. And that's now to just have the program that did what it did last year when it totally fell apart. But he's complaining about the Fox and the ESPN contracts that the SEC and the Big Ten have, and how unfair. And then the very next breath, he'll talk about how all the Olympic sports are just a drain. He wants it both ways. He wants to have his cake and eat it too. They're in our way. What do they produce? Why do they produce? So, okay, so then if this is about just who gets more, then why are you jealous of what Fox and the SEC and the Big Ten and ESPN have? Like they're so myopic. They're so narcissistic in their concerns. And I pointed these things out to them, and I did so very conversationally. My wife just said, that's invincible ignorance. I said, yes, absolutely. You're sitting, the Florida State baseball team right now is in the top 5 in the country. He called them a drain. They're just we have to pay for that. Why do we want that? They're top 5. Football absolutely sucked next year. So it's not even about results. It's just about your fix. So much about this has become about drug addiction. Sports Bro is a drug addict. And we need to break this entire system of that. And here's what this Cody Campbell guy seems to... I think he knows. It doesn't matter how much money he has, and if he can, as often as not, outbuy people, the people he's going up against, and maybe this guy is reprobate or something, he's not like this. But I'm getting the idea that he doesn't want to go year after year up against the likes of which and the people buying the money and how ridiculous they will be. And yes, this applies directly to what happens to be your team, Steve, so it has nothing to do with you personally. But do you regularly want to be in line competing with the likes of Dave Portnoy's, sending Connor Stallions down to buy your quarterback, and how those guys have shown their ass because they are legion? And if if you happen to have a lot of money and you like football and you want your team to be good, but that you don't want to be in that ridiculous race with those kinds of people every year, you need to be involved in a solution. I got the vibe that might be this guy.
To be fair, we tried to send Dave Portnoy down there with Connor Stallions. Portnoy didn't have enough money, so we had to call in Larry Ellison, the CEO of Oracle, because his fiance is a Michigan grad. It took even way more money to get Bryce Underwood than even you thought. Just a point of clarification, but continue on. Go ahead.
Just quintessential Michigan fan right there.
Yes.
So
I know. Yes.
So, because, like I said, Steve's identifying a drug addiction. They can't stop. Smash the Idols, all of them. There is a place that they'll talk about sanity, bring reason back. Here, they can't. They won't. It's not possible for them. So grown-ups have to step in and do it. Again, I've only read one story. He sounded like he's put in enough work on this that he might actually be a grown-up, and he realizes that I don't want to be part of competing against crackheads and letting something I love be ruined by crackheads. So he's taught, and he's holistic in his thinking on this. In terms of name, image, and likeness, in terms of the Olympic sports in Title IX, he finds it absolutely absurd, and he uses moral language like this is what this is doing to non-Olympic sports is just simply unacceptable. And he's absolutely right. This is a guy who made billions of money in business, and he rightly points out that it's an absolute lie. What we've done to this. These college sports are not a business. They're not fundamentally a business. If you're trying to turn it into one, that's a bad idea. If you're just saying it is, you're probably lying, or you're just stupid. And my goodness, the people that look at we talk about like the courts and how rogue they are. Well, but the courts have said it's a business, so I guess no, we're not doing that. We're going to smash this idol. And the only question is if you're going to be part of the problem or part of the solution. This is one of the greatest lies next, and Steve said the only competing one, which should tell you how bad it is. Porn and men's addiction to football are two of the greatest 20th century idols American men have had. Nothing about it currently makes them more moral or smarter. Bottom line.
Got 7 more minutes.
I'm frankly a little disappointed. I thought for sure we'd take this right up to the top of the hour music. Aaron,
that was very bizarre. But he's obviously more informed than I am about this. Todd is now, because he actually has. So was that optimism, Todd?
If this guy...
That's what's so bizarre about this.
He's if Nixon could go to China kind of example.
I can see that.
If he really is one of the biggest buyers that could theoretically just start buying out everybody and make sure that Texas Tech is always a top 10 program, which in my lifetime... It's like never been a regular top 10 program. I mean, once in a while it sniffs around, but it's not. If he could do that in this market and he says, I simply refuse to be part of this, that's what it's going to take. Because sports pro, your average, they can't. They'll sit there, listen to sports radio. It's like they're complaining about porn while watching porn that's all they're doing. That's it. You guys know you're pathetic.
That might be one of the all-time lines on the show. Such a great analogy.
Well, like I said, I should be on this commission. I'm more right about this than anybody in this fruited plain. And a lot of you resent me for it because you're crackheads. And you're the guy saying, yeah, porn's a bad idea while you're watching the porn. You are the idiocracy. And here's the thing. Yes. Oh, dear. Yes, I can watch the game and not watch 10. I can raise my daughters to be athletes while they're also well-rounded women, and I can go watch a game and cheer them on. You act like that's even apples to apples. How dare you go appreciate your daughter's excellence and hope for the best for her while I watch my 20th game? It's the same. No, you're a loser. I'm trying to help you, not be a loser.
F you and thanks for listening. The Steve Deace Show.
Is that better? Is that what you wanted? And Aaron sent me off. He said, "Is that optimism?" No.
What's so funny about this is Todd after raising 4 girls.
Yeah.
Could you imagine Todd after raising 4 boys? Could you imagine? This is Todd after raising 4 girls and doing tea parties and makeup and cuddling and daddy-daughter dates. This is Todd after raising 4 girls, guys.
Knowing Todd now, I don't think he'd be any different if he had raised 4 boys.
There might be something to that. I hadn't even thought about that, but you might be right about that.
Yeah, and that's not a knock
true.
on Todd. It's just, I think the way he understands humans, I don't think there would be much difference. This is something we talked about on our side project recently. That this thing has gotten so screwed up that it's not even, you don't even bat an eye that the flippin' president of the United States would form a working group to solve this problem. Is this something that the president, and this is not a knock on Trump either, is this something in a healthy dynamic that the president of the United States should have to worry about in between trips to Saudi Arabia and taking on big pharma?
Well, we only got what became known as the NCA in the first place because of Theodore Roosevelt.
Yeah.
Remember? Because he was concerned about, the guy that commanded the Rough Riders was concerned about how dangerous and reckless football was becoming and injurious. And so that's how we even got what eventually became known as the NCA, was because of a presidential
but it's not
imposition
anywhere
into
near
sports.
the beast that it is. It wasn't the beast back then that it is now.
This has to do with our conversation that we just had in the previous hour about, you're a communist. This is, if you keep calling things a business and ultimately don't really care about the people involved, we're talking about the exact same thing. You just blindly call things a business where humans are just a widget now, and you get what you've gotten in terms of healthcare. The same thing here. This isn't a business. College is not fundamentally a business. College sports are not fundamentally a business. You're doing that lie because you have an idol that you either can't or won't smash. All right? These are human beings. None of them on any side of this are really being helped. The athletes are absolutely not being helped. And I don't care how much money they're being given. We've seen this cautionary tale with men who are 5 times older than them who get it when they sign that first contract in pro sports and how it ruins them. All right? So this is not a particularly unique lie to college sports. This is gluttony that we are addicted to as Americans. I want to be comfortable. I deserve it. I'm a narcissist. I don't have to think anything else. Honestly, all of this college sports stuff, that's why I call it a drug addiction. How is this helping me? How is it even about you? You're not on the team. They don't know you. You don't know them. They think you're a ridiculous human being for how much you love this more than they actually do. That's the truth.
There it is.
I think we're going to be pretty good this year. Thank you, Todd.
Thank you.
Did you watch the Wisconsin spring game, Todd? Did they have one?
No idea.
Romans 8:28.